Hello, one and all, and welcome to another totally fascinating episode of Spirit Sessions. Because when we have Matthew Mournian on, wow, you just never know where it's going to go. And that's what we love. So step up and smell the sage. And I saw you burning something, Matthew. What were you burning?
That was just some Palo Santo
Yeah, I was
over here.
hoping you'd
Yeah.
see that. Thank you. I love that. And so here we go. And so share it out and go to YouTube and like and subscribe and all that. And be ready for a great show today. But first, Rhonda, do you have a card pull? I forgot to ask you before the show.
Well,
Rhonda's going to do
no, but I was going to ask Matthew to pull a card because he does that professionally.
Yeah. Do you want me to do it now?
Sure.
Do it now? Yeah, for real.
Okay,
this is a regular feature that we have at the beginning of each show, and it's a card just for the week, just to help everybody get by. It's short, 3 minutes or something.
Definitely do that.
What deck are you using?
It's almost like you knew they were right next to me. Literally.
It's a professional psychic, Matthew, and and you've just written this book, so we knew you'd be ready for anything. So
thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, let's so yeah, we'll just start out by pulling a card, and so here we go. Sorry, I just have to shuffle a couple times here. I'm an advocate of heavy shuffling in the tarot realm. Here we go. Here it comes. Everyone's gonna see it all together at the same time. Ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. What do we need to know? Boom. We've received a 9 of Cups. And so I know you guys know about tarot, but I'll give you the multi-dimensional tarot version and it might match up. When the 9 of Cups shows up in your life, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of paths, a lot of emotions, a lot of buildup at times. It could be wish fulfillment, or it could be like, approaching a total, running over type of a situation. But to me, it's usually a good place if that's what you want. And I don't know, what do you guys think about 9 of Cups? What's your feeling?
I'm feeling it's a really abundant card. It's a happy abundance too. It's like abundance of good things, not an abundance of bad things. 9's a great number. I love 9, and I just feel it's a very positive manifestation card. So
nice. I feel you.
Careful what you wish for, because you're going to get it. Yeah.
Right. And then you might get too much of it. Let's say if you were doing healing work, like just in case anyone was ever doing some healing work or energy work on themselves, and you were going to pull a 9 of Cups and you were like, what part of my body would that pertain to? Your lymphatic system.
Oh. Yeah, because there's lots going on there.
Totally, right? Fluid, like the fluid, liquid layers of the body. Anyway, thank you for inviting me here. We just launched into tarot. But anyway.
So, Matthew, give us a little catch up on what you're doing now. You've been to so many disclosure conferences and do all sorts of things. So you've been into a lot of different things. Plus your book just launched, Remember Your Mission. And I love the cover because it's got a mantis on the front of it. So I love that. I can really relate to that personally. So tell us a little bit what's been going on and what you're doing now, so our audience can find you and look at you. And see
totally. When do you think was the last time we did a show? Was it like 1 year ago, 2 years ago?
It was a year ago, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was as well. So that was around, I guess we'll just say 2023. And so 2023 was a weird year for me. It was a lot of what I would call like painful emotional growth and healing stuff that I had to deal with. It was probably the slowest year that I've had since I started doing this work as a professional psychic or like healing practitioner, whatever buzzword you want to add on to it. And so it was a hard year. And then 2024 started and it was like somebody kicked the engines on. And it's been just like a freight train that I've kind of almost been in control of, but not really. And so it's just been a lot of activity. And at the early stages of the year, like you were saying, I was able to write a book finally after many, many years. And I always give credit to those that assist me on this journey. I joined a book kind of program assistance thing by this woman, Jackie Kenner, who she's worked with a lot of people in the larger soul group, and she was just a key player in getting me motivated, and it was almost like a spark kind of sort of lit a larger fire. And so here we are several months later, and really like the heart of the whole thing, I guess we could call it like the mission of right now, based on where we were last time we spoke and where we are now, is that I think a lot of people are coming to that predetermined crossroads or jumping off point in their what we might call awakening or spiritual development journey. And this is the stage in which each of us definitely has an ability, and that's part of the basis of the book that I wrote. But we're almost at the stage where it's like we're being called to put those abilities of higher spiritual discernment to use. Otherwise, it's almost like the energy of the world begins to use us in some form or another. You know what I mean? They pull us into the larger collective timelines, and people get sicker or more addicted or crazier or more separated. But that's kind of the mission for the time being. It's just really documenting that process. And then I still do daily sessions like pretty much every day. But yeah, it's about a lot of it's about training. And so, anyway, that's kind of a mouthful, but that's basically what we've been up to.
Well, being a recipient of your healing work, I found it very helpful after my operation, and I really appreciate you having me as one of your clients that time. But I just noticed a quote on your page the other day. It was talking about don't be dragged into the lower vibration of some of the fear mongering and things that are going on, because there's a lot of our community that's really attaching themselves to a scary timeline, I would say, and sort of promoting that. And I just don't want. We had Diana Cooper on last week, and she was talking about just put a gold bubble around yourself and just keep going forward, because don't even listen to that stuff. You know, she says you got to hang on to the high road to get there. And if you start engaging with that lower vibration, then it's going to drag you down, basically. What do you think?
I certainly agree with that. I would say that for me, maybe that comment or that quote seems to be more of like a personal thing in the moment, meaning that when I read into it, I'm more looking at kind of like my own sort of like, you know what, you really need to stay focused on this over here, because that weird mess will always be there. But it also certainly applies on a larger level. And I don't know if it's like either a gift or a shortcoming that I have, but I've noticed like throughout this weird journey over the past several years that all of us, you guys as well, all part of this soul group that's been going on this journey of, you know, whether we want to call it awakening or activation, I either have the gift or the curse of not having a lot of fear about it. And I've never been one of those people that's been like, we need to watch out for this, or we have to be careful for this, or we need to shield against that. And I think a certain part of that for me might be a little bit of like, you know, because we all have our own version of the ego, and we all have our own version of like, well, I think it's like this sort of a thing. And so I might be wrong. It might be my own, what's the word I say hubris, maybe that's the word I'm looking for. But I've never wanted to approach it from a fearful perspective. And so I still kind of hold on to that, and maybe that's a foolhardy thing, but I'm definitely not one of those doom and gloom people. But I'm also kind of maybe more of a jaded, you know, maybe a little bit jaded and a little bit cynical because of how many people I've worked with over the years. But at this stage, I think like the greatest culprit to our own well-being as what we might call spiritually advancing human beings, like really, really the greatest we could call enemy or detriment to our well-being, I believe, is literally us and the metastasized layers of traumatized emotions that exist within the body. Moreover than any kind of multidimensional being or a Satan or a reptilian or anything. And those are all very real. You know what I mean? But and I don't know, maybe I took your comment and went in a weird direction. That's kind of how I see it.
You're great at segueing or moving off and just expanding on ideas. But yeah, I think there's an element too of self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that, you know, watch the news, all the bad news all the time, and that's all you see in the world. And that's the way you operate from then. If you're thinking the world's a terrible place, well, yeah, it is, because that's what you choose to look at. You can look at the other parts of the world, which are great and beautiful. Oh, yes. I guess, live from an attitude of gratitude rather than, you know,
I feel you.
Yeah. So that's, I just thought that was a really interesting comment that, yeah, I know it can be personal, but it can be put to the whole collective at the same time.
Yeah. Can I just make a really weird like comment here? You're gonna be like, what? It's actually very, very like appropriate though, because I just want to say this publicly. The last time you and I spoke, I remember, I think it was actually when you had done that session after you had some medical work done. It was, right? Was it after that? And I just want to say, like, you look really good. You look like a person that crossed many timelines, and whatever it was that had gone on within your body at that stage of the journey, it really looks like you worked through whatever the element of blockage, or if it was like a karma thing, or if it was like this type of energy or that. Like, at least the version of you that I see here today looks like you really crossed like a very wide gap. You know what I mean? Like, you had to trek a very long way. And so I hope that's not too weird, but it's just you did a really good job.
There was a lot of learning in that, and a lot of lessons in that whole thing. And
good job. Seriously.
Thanks.
Anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I'm getting tingles. Tell us about your book, because I love the title, and I love you may be psychic and not crazy.
Totally. I actually thought I was crazy at the start of it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, and then I'll answer.
No. I was thinking of poor Teresa. She thought she was crazy for a long time, and then she found out she was psychic.
Right?
So.
But I'm certified, man. I had to go to doctors to get certified for this, dude. No. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it is called, maybe you're not crazy, maybe you're psychic, or excuse me, what if you're not crazy? What if you're psychic? And because really that was the basis of my early stage journey. And the book follows a path for me that began in 2015. And so it's a very, what we might call, recent addition to my personal timeline on Earth. It was not like a full memoir. It wasn't like some like autobiographical type of thing. It was like, starting in 2015, I had a series of events in my life that honestly changed my entire world. Every single thing about me changed. And it's weird to continue to say that years and years later, but there could be nothing that was more true. And the book basically follows what occurred for me, which, to get down to like the most basic elements of it, I had what many people talk about as a full or a just crazy Kundalini awakening, or some people call it a crown chakra kind of just tearage, ripping open. My energy body was rapidly expanded in 2015, and not in a cool, sexy, awesome, or mystical way either. It was in a horribly dissociative, schizoaffective manner that tore my entire world apart for about 2 years, until I met a series of people that kind of really gave a name and redefined what it was that was happening in my life. And I would say the first part of that book is really just the story of what happened to me that I really never got to tell. And it goes through a bunch of experiences, how it was when it started, all the way through what I believe to be, like notable points in my personal timeline, which for some reason for me always revolved around some sort of a mystical being that would appear in my life. And by mystical, I mean, also extraterrestrial or higher dimensional. And it was kind of the first time in which I was able to really tell those stories in a public manner, and, discuss a number of other things. But here is the real heart of it, because it's really just 2 books in one. If for people that have actually read it, and there's been a number of them, I'm very grateful to say that already. They're like, yeah, it is sort of like 2 separate books, because there's the first part, which is really a bunch of experiences of like what kind of like how I became what you see here today. And then the second part is this thing that I call kind of a very rough instruction guide of how to go through what I call the 4 gateways of psychic activation, which is essentially a set of 4 very, very basic behavior patterns that one can adopt in their direct life, that when done with devotion and with dedication and with reverence, will fundamentally change your consciousness and the manner in which you perceive spiritual energy. Even if you didn't do them with that intention, it would still do that, because it opens our body up in a different way. And so the second part of the book is the 4 gateways of, what is it that we have to do. And Anyway, I will pause there before I go on and on, but that's basically it. You know what I mean? It's I guess the last thing I'll say is that it was really, honestly, like in the end, it was really just a self-therapy project.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Which I was like, I realized I have to dump these things out. You know, like,
Yes.
so
But I think a lot of people write books for the same reason, to get out things, and a lot of times when they're writing fiction, it's really autobiographies. So I think it really helps them cleanse their, it gets it out of your head.
Sometimes it's called an act of power. You've got all this in you, and it needs to be presented into the world into a way that you can let go of, like a book you can let go of, or a teaching or something. So awesome.
that makes a lot of sense. It was a very this will be a weird choice of descriptive words. It was very purgative for me, meaning that it was like there was this essence of some kind of energy that had to come out. And I think it's sort of good to talk about, because I believe that a lot of the people that will end up hearing my voice, and maybe even you guys as well, are coming to a stage in the journey where it's almost like, in order for us to go forward in terms of what it is we're becoming, some of us will have chosen this indeterminate period in your personal life in which you will be called to report upon what it is you've obtained and what it is that you've kind of gathered and built of yourself. And it just so happens that one of the ways in which we do that as humans is by producing a body of work. For some people, it's a visual art. For other people, it's music. For some people, it's a book. Other people, it's videos now as well, like you guys are doing with the show. But it's like, it's a thing that we have to almost like display or give back to the world in a sense. And I think a lot of people are going through that, but it's very traumatic and it's very difficult. I can't say that writing a book was this romantic process for me, because it took me through like so many weird, so many weird, traumatic old places where you're like, oh God, we're really gonna just write oh my God, yep, we're doing it.
Yeah, very cathartic, but at the same time, like self-facing. Like,
oh yeah, you have to face it. Yeah, it's yeah.
I would love for you to put it in an audiobook, because that's the best way I can consume books for some reason.
Me too. Actually,
it's just like I'll see all your pictures. Like, I'll see all the things that you're talking about better than reading about them. But I just realized that it really goes in. So you'll have to do it. And
that's certainly the plan, actually. I'll be real. I don't actually know how to do that, but a lot of people have asked me. And actually, I personally prefer audiobook as well. I'll just sit there and listen to the whole thing on a massive binge. And so a part of me really wants to do that. So let's pray that it happens.
Hold space for that.
I'm very, very willing. I'm totally willing to do it.
Oh, there's lots of people who know how to do it. You either do it yourself, because you have a great voice, or do half of it yourself and then get some friend or voice actor to do the other half. So,
I have a feeling it's probably going to happen.
Good. That's awesome. Right. Somebody will find it, because once you're, it's a great way to consume, and the knowledge over and over again too. Because, like I said, we were listening to Diana Cooper's new book, The Golden Future, and I said every time I put it on, it's like calms you right down, because she talks, So your voice would do the same thing. Hey, Teresa, very calming, very.
I love that, because even when I'm reading a book, I can hear the person's voice doing it. So how much better hearing them tell their own story from their own voice.
You know what? Not everybody has that. What you just said about how when you're reading a book, you can hear that person's voice.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that goes along with that whole story about how some people don't have an internal dialogue as well, which I know is a thing that might be related to that. But I've been told, or one of the things that was passed on to me rather, which may or may not be true, so take it with a grain of salt, but that there's stages in which telepathic communication opens up within the body. And one of the definitive stages of telepathic communication is when you begin to read the written word and you can hear that person literally in your head. And what's funny is sometimes you'll do that with people whose voice you've never even heard. And you'll read their book and you're like, somehow I know exactly what this person sounds like. And so to me, I choose to think that's real, but to me, that's a really good sign. So
Yeah.
I can taste foods too that I've never tasted, and that's so freaky. There's this lady named Amy Tan. She's a really neat writer. But anyhow, she's describing some food from ancient Japan or China. I can't even remember where we were in this story. And man, I'm sitting there tasting it and craving it, and it's like I don't even like fish, but here I am craving it. So it's so funny.
That's cool.
Well,
I believe
I
it.
never thought of that. That's why I have to start baking again. Yeah, I had to make Anzac cookies after reading about them. So tell us about the cover and why the without giving away all your books.
Oh no, I will totally talk about it.
Why
and you're
the
gonna
praying mantis has
So I will tell you why. First off, I will say I made it intentionally mysterious and somewhat questionable. And I want to say that there's some big meaningful theme behind it, but I want to be totally honest. I was like, that would be really cool if I put that mantis being on there and then I put a little bit of like a blood drop and then people would look at it and go, what? Which was literally what happened, but some people got weird about it. But then there is a greater significance as well, which was why I chose the image of the mantis being, because the very first conscious extraterrestrial experience that I ever had in this life was with a gigantic praying mantis being that showed up in the time in which I was doing a very particular type of a breathwork meditation that anyone can do. And so you guys can go on YouTube. It's very safe, by the way. I want to let you know. So it's nothing weird. There's no entities or beings attached to it. But you can go on YouTube and you can look up Ananda Mandala. Ananda Mandala. And so what it is this sort of Eastern meditation process where this guy or woman, I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman, but this person, comes in and they basically take you through a breathwork meditation in which they just go 1, 2, 1, 2, while these beats and the sound plays. And the 1, 2 is you going and you're doing this breathwork meditation. And so I was doing that one morning in 2016 before I really knew about it. Well, I didn't know about anything at that stage of my life. I just did it because it made me feel more grounded. And when we got to the crown chakra, there was like this pop, like type of a thing. And to my left was that praying mantis being. And he was just sitting there staring at me. And it was like physical in this body, or at least that's what I believe, because I had my eyes open. I wasn't in like, it was like I opened my eyes and I was like, and you're just asking a million questions goes through your body. Like every question that I can possibly imagine went through me all throughout my body. And I was just like, what are you? Who are you? And the voice he said was Ezekiel.
wow.
And then eventually he just disappeared. But so that was to me the first time that I knew something. Maybe not the first time, but it was one of the first times in which I knew, going back to the whole title of the book of Maybe You're Not Crazy. That was one of the first times in which I knew I wasn't crazy, but I had no framework with which to explain how that being showed up for me. But the crazy thing is, when it looked at me, all I could feel was pride and love. And I just streamed tears and I was like, thank you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was so real that I just knew it was like more real than here, which is a weird thing to describe. You're like, how could this being show up? And it's more real. But it was just one of the most formative experiences of my entire life on earth. And so for some reason, I always pay homage to weird things in a symbolic way, which I guess is weird because they say, the so-called dark beings also do a similar thing with negativity, but I do it with the things that are sort of meaningful, for me. And so that was kind of how that guy showed up. Yeah.
Awesome.
So had you had any childhood memories of this Ezekiel?
I'll be real. I don't know. I don't think I did. There is this part in the book that everyone can find where I talk in great length about how I had sort of a cyclical experience that I always believed was a dream. I never, ever, ever, ever thought it was anything other than a dream. And a blue light would come in my room when I was a little kid. And I always remember it would come in and it would come right to the tip of my nose. And then usually it would get to the tip of my nose and I would just wake up in the morning. And then one day it came into the tip of my nose, and instead of waking up in the morning, I woke up in this really weird place. And a bunch of strange things happened. And within that experience, to make a super long story short, there was these very, very tall men. They're like these massive, long, skinny guys that in my child mind, I thought they're like basketball players, and they gave everyone this little drink. And right when that drink happened, something really weird took place in my life that I've never been able to explain or understand. And I don't know what it was. I don't know that it involved anything like a mantis being or anything like that, but it was one of the first times in which I, looking back on my life, I knew that there was something weird going on. I just never had the language to understand it. And I wasn't really in a family that wanted to talk about it. So you know how it is when you're a kid.
Yeah.
You just go like, you're like, I'm fine, and I had to do that forever. And so I guess, maybe it took me until age 47, in which I was at the stage of my life where I was able to kind of, purge that out in a way. But come to find out, a lot of other people have had a very similar scenario. So,
neat.
So when you've been going to these you've been invited into these disclosure conferences, because I think more and more disclosures happening everywhere all the time. They just can't. It's like the pot's boiled over and everything's out, and it's just a matter of time before they serve it to us, or we get served. I don't know how it's going to happen exactly, but it's coming. Do you find more and more that people are openly talking about their experiences, and they're more or less just trying to let other people know that they're not crazy?
Oh, absolutely. I just came back from this event called the Full Disclosure Now 2024 conference, which was a beautiful thing that took place out here in Florida. One of the all-time funnest ones we've done. Not a massive, event, but it was excellent. And it was incredible. But I also have to say a very weird thing, and you're gonna be like, "What? For real?" I don't know if I ever said this publicly. I don't think I ever planned or had any desire to be a part of a disclosure community or anything like that. It was never a choice where I was like, I'm going to go into this community and work with these people and do this thing. In fact, I've oftentimes questioned, why I'm there, because the reality is it's been a very, very difficult road for me. And I've dealt with a lot of criticism and difficulty and gatekeepers and all kinds of weird, just kind of like social obstacles that, didn't pertain to other people who were willing to say the right words at the right times and, make the right claims. And so for me, it's actually, or my perception rather, has been that it's been a very distinct uphill battle. It's almost like, though, on some level, I was placed here by spirit. And some people hear that type of a thing and they're like, what does that mean? And, I don't know what it means. It means that like I just ended up within this soul group of people. And here we are 7, almost 8 years later. And I'm like, I guess this is where we were meant to be, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm also deeply, devoted to the process of disclosure. It's just weird though, because I think the longer you hang out and like continue to do self-work and continue to open your energy and continue to work with other people, you kind of realize that it's really, at least for me, it's really about healing the human spirit and sort of like, what some people say, like liberating our consciousness. And maybe that's just what I've evolved toward, is that really for me at this stage, it's more about the activation of who we are and what we came here to do, more so than, the divulging of information that everyone already knows is true anyway. It's just we're waiting for some sort of official stamp to tell us it's okay to believe. But everyone already, you know what I mean? It's like contacts happening everywhere. We know this. And so anyway, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't say it in a negative way. It's just this is where I was placed, I guess, which I'm very, very grateful for. I have to be real, but also
do you think it's because you mitigate the fear?
I think that maybe that's a big part of it. There's this other part of me that it might even, like, this part of me that feels like I'm afraid to say it because it sounds egotistical, but maybe there's truth in it. So, feel free to cringe when I say it. But for some reason, I'm a person that has an ability to coexist alongside very, very damaging or difficult or dysfunctional or negative type of energies in this world without it really affecting me in ways that it's affect other people, or in the deprogramming and the healing of it. Like whether I wanted to or not, it was just a thing that happened for me. And it would kind of like chose me in a way. And I think part of one of the reasons why I've had success and been able to remain in those places and within communities in which I myself might not necessarily feel like that I fit their purpose, on a personal level, is because it's like I think a certain number of people like me are always going to be needed in any sort of community. And I've kind of noticed that as a social trend, because while I have not really ever received a form of, social acknowledgement that I wanted, it's weird because literally everybody comes and knocks on my back door later when something goes wrong. And at the same time, I feel honored by that, because I'm like, okay, you know what though? That means I have a purpose here. And I mean that very, very sincerely, but it's just a very strange game to do the type of work that I do. And I think like you guys will also know, because both of you have done intuitive work in your own way. And like the more you open yourself up to that realm, the more I think we also open ourselves up to the scrutiny of people who do not have the ability to understand such things. And so it's a weird process. But anyway, I think I'm going on and on. So I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. Like there's always got to be that grounding, healing presence at these places, because a lot of those people are messed up mentally because they've suffered trauma that they can't sort of release on their own. And the only way they're doing it is sort of, this cathartic kind of thing that they go out and they talk about it and sort of find other people that have the same thing, but they haven't really healed themselves at the same time, or haven't had the chance to be believed by themselves in what they have experienced. And because everybody's saying, that didn't happen. So,
right. I definitely feel you. I have a lot of that didn't happen in my own life as well, like in both really cool good ways and really cool negative ways. And I don't know, I guess like just what I've noticed is I think one of the first stages for a lot of us when we go through like a soul deprogramming or like this deep soul level shifting healing phase is it's almost like first we have to purge it all out, which is kind of weird. If you want to go back, I'm going to make a weird U-turn. Ready? Here we go. I'm going to go all the way back to when we came in here and we pulled 9 of Cups, which when you're clearing energy from the body and you get a 9 of Cups, it's like, what do you do with it? It's time to purge. Like something needs to be all drained out in order for something new to come in. And I don't know, maybe I'm getting vague and like overly philosophical. So I'll kind of pause there, but I think you guys sort of get where we're going.
Yeah, I think you're right. What do you think, Teresa? What do you think?
Well, I was gonna say I don't know how appropriate it is, but before the show, Rhonda was pulling certain energy out of me today. So I was wondering if that energy was overlaying on any of this. But I had the mammogram and radiation or whatever they use. I don't know. And so it's like, Rhonda, are my tatas okay? And so she did some Reiki for me.
Good.
Get that energy out of there, because I don't want to carry that energy with me.
Can I just tell you one thing, and please take it with a grain of salt? But you do have a lot of very small, or I'll say I perceive rather, that you have a lot of very small gnome-like devas or elf-like energies that have been working with your energy field. And I would imagine that, and you can check in with what this feels like within your body, that they may be one of the sort of energies that you could call on in your meditations and in your daydreams, especially because I think they kind of respond to daydreams like a scent, just so you know. That'll kind of pull their energy in, and you can think of them like scavengers. Like they'll come and take like dirty bits and broken things and trash from the side of the road, and maybe if you have a lot of radiation in the body they would help with that. But I would say beyond that, it just feels like they're with you regardless. Like awesome. They're just with you, period. And so
I get the chills. So
they might also make things go missing around your house, though. Like, so just beware of that.
Good. It's like, not me, because I could walk into the room and forget what I'm doing. So I'm glad it's not just me.
Okay, that could definitely be part of it. But they definitely, I don't know, in my opinion, and your body will tell you whether it's true or not, so take it with a grain of salt. But it feels like they're definitely there to help. They might need a little bit of a purpose, but I would just say, like, if you want to put a name on it so you could like look it up, I would call them devas, which are like little mini elemental guys, like they're like smaller spirits usually, but also gnomes. Or at least the way it showed up to me was like just the shape of a gnome, like garden gnomes. But anyway,
I've
maybe
seen
that
them
sounds
before
silly.
too. I went through a forest and I prepared before I went there because I knew I was going through some ancient forest. And I go, I want to see some gnomes. And I did not see them with my eyes. I saw them with my third eye. And it's like, how many? It's like, oh my God. Yeah. So I have worked with all these. I didn't know that they were just a part of my entourage and stuff. So thank you.
Totally.
Dragons, gnomes, and unicorns. That's us. We're missing our mermaids today, but
why not?
Okay. Yeah, I know people, when they hear this stuff, they go, "What are you guys talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
But as we hear from NASA and the CIA that we're living in a simulation and there's dimensions, and they're starting to come out with talking about, maybe I'm crazy, but I'm sure that's what I've read.
Oh yeah.
That there's maybe the space beings are really people from interdimensionals. Well, yeah, that makes sense. And everything may be just like I was saying, and I've said it a couple times on this show. We were watching the Northern Lights a couple months ago, and you could kind of see them with your naked eye. But when you took the iPhone and you took the picture, 3 seconds, it was like a brilliant color show. Like, it was amazing. So I'm wondering, is that what happens with interdimensionals, that we can't just see them with our naked eye, but they're all there in their own full color? If we had a camera that could capture them, we could see them.
Like a full spectrum of light, per se. That's a smart question. In my opinion, I believe that's very much how it is. And I don't know what the exact number is, but I heard somebody saying, or rather, I've heard this said many times over the past few years, that the human eye can only see something like I won't even try to quote the percentage because I don't know, but it's a ridiculously low amount of available light. Like, our eyes can only perceive something like 2%. I don't know. I'll just say 2 for, lack of a more accurate number. And it's like, there's basically just confirming that there's this whole other world of available light that none of us are able to perceive unless it's in certain conditions. Sometimes when Kundalini raises within the body, or even in certain plant medicine journeys, which I'm not like a super big advocate of so much. I think they have their place, definitely. But I mean, there's times in which you can kind of open that within the body. But one of the things that I've been shown, and what I think continues to be reflected to me on a daily basis, because it's like literally every day I'm sitting in this chair right here, and when people come in on Zoom and we're working with their guides, it's like I just turn one way or the other, and there's this conversation that will start. And the conversation's so different. Over the years, I've learned that it can only be, at least in my understanding, the energy of that person and their guides and what shows up. And it's been one of those things that I think I've learned to trust with this on this deep level that kind of defies logic. And yet at the same time, I also understand that there's a lot of people on earth who are just coming to the stage in which they're beginning to believe such things are real. So there's this really big gap in all of our understandings about how spiritual and non-physical energy works. And I don't know, for me, maybe this is a lame thing to say, but I have lost the desire to prove it to anyone. And I don't know why. It's like, it's not even a thing that I flaunt where I'm like, oh yeah, it's not like I'm throwing it out there and going, you don't even know what's real. It's just like, I've stopped even telling people in the 3D world what it is that I do. When you go to like get a haircut and they're like, so what do you do? I'm like, I'm a teacher. I teach online classes. Oh, really? What? Body stuff, systems, anatomy, which is true, except it's chakras and meridians and like psychic development. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's just a thing for me that I've kind of kind of allowed to just be kind of a latent thing. And I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe that's just my stage of the journey. But anyway, I kind of even lost where I was going with that. But I think each one of us is experiencing that in some way. There's this piece of you that changed from, think of yourself 1 year ago. I've been saying this a lot though, but I think it's very true. You guys think of yourself a year ago, about what you thought was real, about what you thought was true, about what was going on in your life, and look at where you are right now. And surely there's things that a year ago you really thought were legit, and now you're like, oh my God. Oh, you know what I mean? You're like, I can't, we never, and so I just think we're changing so rapidly. And anyway, I could go on and on about it, but I'll sort of pause there.
I think it's funny that you say you don't bother trying. I just go about assuming everybody knows what I'm talking about, and then I leave it to them to ask me questions or go ha 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 whatever. I just go like, yeah, this is my normal. I hang around with people that understand completely. If you don't understand, then you'll have to ask.
I think that's smart. I'm really glad that you can do that. I kind of live in the middle of nowhere in Florida, so I don't really talk to anyone. So I'm just like I'm just a normal person going about my.
I live way more in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, but, do you?
Yeah. I live in rural Ontario in farmland.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Oh, yeah, you do. I remember seeing the pig. Yeah, you've okay. I remember now. You guys had a lot of really cool wildlife.
And poor Teresa lives in the middle of the Bible Belt, so she's got to be careful what she says. So
that's kind of how it is here. Then she knows. Really? You kind of know how it is here. Then, all right.
Every corner has another church, and it's like, oh God, that's enough.
Yeah, you don't even dare like talking about a tarot card, right? You're just like, yeah.
No, it's true. It's scary.
Yeah, our church let us pull angel cards for the children of I forget where we were. Anyways, we were building schools.
Yeah. Jordan? No, I can't remember where. Was it?
Yeah.
There somewhere.
Excuse me, my cut just tickled my throat.
Oh dear.
It's all good. Let it out. I feel you. Yeah. It's really cool that your church allowed you guys to do that. That's a very open-minded place. I'm really glad that they did that. I think that's a thing that's a program that I pray gets kind of dropped by our like collective in the coming years, even if you are a part of old world religions, because there's still a lot of good things about them. I'm not one of those like, haters of, all the old world religions. They got some good stuff, but if I could pray for like evolution, I would pray that they would let go of the idea that divination is evil or of, something, satanic or, like that, because I just do not see that on any level. But I also get the reason why, because it does open oneself up to being able to kind of take their power back in a way, because it teaches you to learn how to communicate with spirit in a way that I think the church was brought up to be the sole authority of. It's almost like it like removes the middleman, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I can see how that's threatening, but just so you know, that is one of the 4 gateways of intuitive activation, divination. Yeah. It's where you give yourself a language with which to communicate with spirit. So anyway, I pray people become more open-minded to it.
So can you give your 4 steps and just in summary?
Oh yeah,
so people
absolutely.
So people will now then they'll go and they'll get it in depth.
Definitely. So these are the 4 steps. So why are they called the 4 steps? It was a thing that I noticed over doing this work professionally from the very beginning. I think I'm obsessive in my observation of the world. And I noticed that people that made this work often did certain things. People that stayed healthy, that didn't get mutated and sick and addicted and twisted off on a weird path. They usually did a few things that kept them in that way, and they kept their abilities growing. Stage number 1 is detox and deprogramming. That is where we purify the body. And then we also deprogram our old ideas, what we were brought up with, what we believe to be true. So it's equal parts psychological and equal parts physical. And it really just has to do with detoxing heavy metals, especially heavy metals and parasites. And in the book, that's the big emphasis, where I'm like, if you want to really begin, start with heavy metals, parasites, detox harmful chemical materials from the body. And so that's a process that will be ongoing for most of us for all of our life. It's just how it goes. But that's the first stage. For a lot of people, it's a thing we still haven't done, especially parasites. And so that's gateway number one. Gateway number two, which you can do while you're in gateway number one, is divination. And that's where you begin experimenting with and choosing the manner in which you want to communicate with spirit. I'm very tarot oriented. That was the one that really grabbed me. Other people are oracle readers. Some people use pendulums. Others do things like runes or I Ching or a million other ways. You know what I mean? It's really just the stage where you begin to devote yourself to learning that method or learning a number of methods and seeing which one sticks. And that is really kind of like a defining factor for anyone who really wants to open your abilities, because divination will literally it'll open the door so that you begin to understand outside of your body and in your mind's eye the way spirit works and how they communicate and the way to connect with your guides and so many things. It goes on and on. And then gateway number three is probably the one where the most change will ever come into a person's life. And that is when you begin to learn processes of self-healing and energetic anatomy. And by energetic anatomy, I mean we learn how to work with our chakras and our meridians, layers of non-physical energy around your organs. That's the stage in which we become kind of like our own human technician. And that's the stage where you begin to create the most change, because that's where you learn who and what you really are. I think for people that really choose to walk this path, that's the stage that nobody can ever avoid, because that's where you learn like what's going on inside me and how does this work and how do I change, like really change. And so that's gateway number three. I know it's a lot of stuff, right? And so that's also the stage where people begin to do Reiki. That's where they start doing, shamanic healings. That's where they start building their own, modality. And in that part of the book, I give everybody this whole set of phrases, which I know it's a whole other can of worms, but it's essentially an alien language. That's my belief. That we use to open up chakras and layers of energy. And so that's also contained in there, a little bit of a system of how to begin to work with your own body. And then gateway number four, the final one, is, everyone says this is the most important. It kind of is, though, honestly. That's the one where we learn to cultivate the energy body, which in the end, it won't matter if you never learn how to work with your chakras or if you don't know how to read tarot. It won't matter if you never even detoxed. If you don't have a method of regenerating the physical and non-physical body, you will eventually give out and none of this will work. And so that's the thing that actually keeps us going. And so, yeah, cultivation.
It's funny, we had a discussion about that last week as well, about maintaining and purifying our energy body, right, yep. Teresa?
I wasn't.
Oh, yeah, you weren't there. I'm sorry. Yeah, we were talking about how this is becoming very important. Just
Oh yeah, I think
aware of it.
I think it's more important now than ever before in our human journey. We have so many layers of confirmation that we are knee deep in the stage of non-physical energy transference. Everyone knows 5G. Everyone knows, AI, now you just think it next to your phone and they're like, oh, here's that product you thought of yesterday. And you're like, you know what I mean? It's already the whole like psychic web that's connecting us is so strong right now that it's like, unless you begin to use it and clear your channels to interact with it, it starts to use and influence you. And look at all the people you see on the planet who are influenced by it every day. And anyway, I could go on and on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, truly. Yeah, we were talking about having a book, how it's mind, spirit, and body, but now it's also etheric body we have to work on as well. We have to upgrade those manuals to include our energy bodies around us as well as our physical bodies. Matthew, tell us where people can find you and what services you offer. And we know we can find your book right now, Remember Your Mission, on Amazon and in Kindle, and hopefully soon on audiobook.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, get on that right away. Yeah.
Honestly, I probably will. Actually, enough people keep asking, and I genuinely want to. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, because so many people are just like us. Like, I'd rather hear it read to me so I can see all the pictures. It's so much more fun. I know I see them when I read it, but it's different. I have friends who can't even see the pictures when they read it. I said, but how do you understand what you're reading? I don't understand.
No, that makes sense. So, but that's also the sign that's the literal evidence of the open third eye, which is a good thing to pass on to people. When the third eye opens, it's not in the outer world. It's not out here. It's like boom within the imagination, which is like
Yeah.
one of the first layers when you start to move into real like etheric energy and into that fourth density state. One of the first layers is the imagination layer. It's an actual layer that your consciousness has to go through, and that's where everyone stops, because that's the layer in which you realize in order for you to get through it, you must allow your body to believe that you're making things up. And that is one of the biggest like weird, like just mind loops where you're like, what? You mean I have to make it up and create it within my imagination in order to get through a stage in which I can more accurately communicate on a visual level with spiritual energy? Yes. It's like, anyway, you will
I'm just,
always
I
know that.
noticed that brings up a whole thing. Like, when people talk, do you see the pictures that they're telling you? When they tell you a story, you see
Yeah,
what they're saying.
yeah.
And you literally, I see what you're saying. You literally do. I don't know if you do, Teresa, too, but I see what they're
when
saying.
I'm reading or hearing a story, like I love to listen to the stories, and I feel like I'm there. I feel it. But if somebody's telling me drive here and go past this, I can't do that.
Well,
That
that
makes
gets me
sense.
into trouble. That gets me into trouble because sometimes I make up the wrong landmarks. But yeah. Anyways, Matthew, tell us what you're doing and where people can
Yeah,
find you. I mean, your links
thank
are
you.
in your biography attached to this video.
Yeah.
They'll be attached to the podcast. They'll be attached to the YouTube and wherever
Yeah,
else is
thank
going
you.
on.
So I do this work every day. This is the only thing I do. That is to say, I do professional psychic readings and energy clearing processes professionally. It's the only work I do, and I'm really grateful that that's what I get to do in this life. So does my wife, Honora, as well. And you guys can find us at rememberyourmission.com, where people can book sessions. And you can also, we have a number of pre recorded classes for people that are trying to begin working with their chakras or their meridians, or even people that are starting to begin to learn to read tarot. We have pre recorded classes through our website that people can access really easily. And so we have that avenue. And then we also have YouTube, which has been pretty quiet the past few months because we wrote a book and it's just been very busy time. But we're over at Remember Your Mission on YouTube, and we're going to do more shows in the future, hopefully soon. And then thirdly, we do a monthly gathering on Patreon, which somehow I don't know how. In September of this year, it's 4 years going. I don't know how.
Wow, you did
And
very
so,
well.
yeah, right.
Thanks.
There's this group of people from all over the world that have been gathering with me and Honora every month for the past 4 years, where we just do readings. And it's a really easy, low cost way for people that are starting to get acclimated to the world of intuitive development and just how readings work and how to ask questions and just what that is. You can find us on Patreon at the Blue Flame Collective, or you can also just do Remember Your Mission on Patreon. But yeah, we got this monthly group thing that keeps going and going. And so that's where everybody can find us. And I just want to say thank you again for asking me to be on your show. I've really enjoyed talking with you guys every so often. I mean it really, really sincerely. You guys have such a cool energy. And anyway,
Well, we
it's
love you.
really an
You
honor.
have a really cool energy, and you're
Thanks.
fascinating. Teresa, did you want to ask Matthew our question?
Okay, these are the hard questions. Did you want to get a drink of water first or anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. First question is the one you're walking out on stage to give your speech, but this time they're playing your song, your theme song. What is the theme song of your life that they're playing?
Okay. You guys don't realize there's no way you could have known that I actually had this song chosen for years. I know what it is. I don't know the name of it because it's in Italian, but anyone can find it, and I guarantee that anyone here that watches this show will have never heard of it. But it's by the composer Nino Rota, and he's this Italian guy that did a lot of film scores for the filmmaker. Well, I can't even say his name. Not Pasolini, this other guy. Anyway, I should probably be able to say his name. He did Satyricon and Amarcord and a bunch of just kind of fringe, really weird Italian movies. Federico Fellini, there we go. He did a bunch of soundtracks for this guy Federico Fellini, which is a brilliant filmmaker. Anyway, this is going to be so dumb and niche, sorry, but I just had this idea years ago that there's this weird little Italian song that will play when I die.
Oh.
And for some reason, that's how I'll know when that happened, because I will have created this etheric recording in astral space that will click on that song right when it happens. And so that's cool. The one that plays, but you guys can look it up. You can look up Nino Rota, and it's just this wistful old world Italian music, with like accordions, and it's whatever. But anyway, so that's the one I would choose.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite crystal that you like?
Actually, I do. I have a revolving door between these two kind of weird little generalized like quartz rods that I hold when I do energy work. I'll just kind of sit here and just kind of use them. I have those, and then I have a piece of danburite, which is just this little wedge, which I don't know why. I've just always loved it. I can never say the word either. Danburite. I never really see it around, but it was just a chunk that I got years ago, and it's one of those few stones that I'm like, I'm always going to keep that because I just still love it after all these years. And so those are the main ones. That one and these little guys here,
And we were going to ask if you saw UFOs, but you see them right in your house, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, well, here, I'll just say one last thing then. There have been a lot of activity in terms of benevolent reptilian beings who are actually working on the side of humanity in very, very deliberate ways. So that's the thing that I pray that people will start to open themselves to, is that not all of them are out to kill us. So that's a very important kind of mission aspect for me. There's a lot of good reptilians, and I pray that we open our hearts to the strengthening that they can give us as a human race, because we really need it right now. I know you guys know what I mean. And then the other thing is there's a whole bunch of other kind of like really aspects of self, and we're at a stage on Earth, especially when we switch through all these timelines, where there's a multitude of other versions of you, literally you, across a million bazillion different timelines. And I believe we're at a stage where those other versions of us are just more reachable than they've ever been. And so when you're seeking strength or alignment or faith, or when you're seeking to feel supported by spirit, reach out to the other versions of you on other timelines that are available to lend their energy. And anyway, see what happens. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Matthew. We really appreciate it. And we're going to say goodbye now. Stick on with us after this. And we'll talk to you soon, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Boom, boom, boom.